writers, this video is going to give you some tips and ideas for how to write a summary for your sources. Let's get started. You already know that summarization is taking a piece of original writing and boiling it down to its essence, but this video is going to focus more on how to summarize and what that process looks like. To do this, I'm going to have you focus back on the movie review article that I used for my annotated bibliography about Avengers. Here is a passage from that article. So the first step to this summarization process is to take a look at your original texts and ask yourself, what stands out for me? What's important here? What are the main ideas? Well, a couple of things stand out. In this first paragraph, the words scope and the word universe stands out. One of the main points of this article is that the movie covers a lot of material, so these words are important. In the second paragraph, I also see the phrase 10 previous Marvel movies, and I catch the words forgo, introduction. My takeaway from this section is that because there are several previous movies, the director is going to skip the exposition of the story. And finally, at the end, I see that Tony Stark is going to be able to get hold of the stone that was previously in Loki's scepter. That information, coupled with info from another paragraph, lets me know that the situation with Tony Stark is central to the plot of Age of Ultron. There is a lot more here, but these are unnecessary details if I'm just trying to come up with a summary. So now let's move on to the summary. What is an acceptable summary, and what might it look like? What makes this acceptable? Well, to start out, there is some citation information. According to Sean O'Connell, a writer at Cinema Blend, etc., I'm not talking about citation information like MLA or APA, but rather it's telling where the info is coming from, in this case from an article on the website Cinema Blend. After that, I see a lot of key points we saw in the original text. We saw that the movie is broad in scope. We also read that the director forgoes a tedious introduction. I wrote, the action of the story begins right away. And the last main point is that the basic plot of Age of Ultron are Tony Stark's plans for the stone in Loki's scepter. So what we see here is a large piece of text, and it gets boiled down to its essence. So now let's take a look at a not so good example. So first of all, this section doesn't begin with any kind of orienting citation. It just jumps right in. But that is not as problematic as the fact that this author did not change anything about the first sentence of the passage. I'll admit that I didn't fully grasp the scope of the phrase, particularly the word universe, until Joss Whedon expanded the playing field with his massive, immersive, and wildly entertaining The Avengers Age of Ultron. That is exactly what the original article said. So because there are no quotation marks around these phrases, this author is saying, those are my words, this language is mine. That's what you're doing when you don't have quotation marks around the language of your summary. We English teachers have a fancy name for that. We call it plagiarism, which you want to avoid at all costs. Now, what about the rest of this passage? Well, the author borrowed a lot of phrases here. If you compare this to the original text, you'll see that only a few phrases have been changed. If your text has the feel of the original, then we can't call it summary. It's just taking chunks and putting it together. So another problem that this creates for this unacceptable summary is that it's too long. This passage does not really take the main points of the original article. It's actually putting just about everything from that first passage and including it in its summary. Okay, so now that we've discussed what makes an acceptable summary, let's talk about some steps for how to write one. First up, you must read the text. I'm serious. Before you get to work, you need to make sure you read the whole thing from beginning to end. As you read, you may want to jot down a few key words that stand out to you, but really, let me emphasize a few key words. This will help you boil the piece to its essence. Next, put the text away. If it's too much of a temptation, close your computer and handwrite this portion. If you want to type your summary, but you are tempted to look at your text too often, go ahead and X that tab off your browser. What's important will filter up in your memory. That's what stood out. Now, go ahead and state the main ideas in your own words. Remember, this is supposed to sound like you, what would come out of your mouth. Now, here are a few other reminders. Don't mix your opinion into the summary. That can be done later. After you're done, you can go back and check your writing against the original. Make sure you didn't go with any of the exact phrases that the original writer used. If you did, get rid of them. Take another stab at it. Also, make sure that you didn't get too detailed. Is your summary too long? Don't be flowery, just go basic. That is it for summary. Give it a shot and refer back to these steps if you need a reminder. Happy writing!